Welcome to another edition of Sunday Night Live. I'm your host, Pierre Quinn, and here on Sunday Night Live, we get you ready for your week by making leadership practical. This is the space, this is the place where we have those conversations that leaders really need to have. And sometimes, if we're honest, we don't really have them, but they're so necessary. They're so crucial to leading better this week. And it's a pleasure to hang out with you for another edition of Sunday Night Live. As you're watching this on whatever your platform you're watching it, I want to encourage you to do a couple of things. Number one, hop in the comment section. We love to do shout outs here on Sunday Night Live. The other thing is, if you're watching this on YouTube, take this link and text it to some leaders that you know, or drop it in your Slack channel. If you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn, go ahead and tag a leader and hit share as well. As we talk about this evening on Sunday Night Live, we're talking about courageous leadership. And I got five questions that you need to answer personally if you want to lead more courageously. 5 questions you need to answer if you want to be a more courageous leader this week. Now, I know I'm recording this on Father's Day, so shout out to all of my fathers out there who are leading homes, who handling business on your job, handling business at home, handling business in your personal life, all the areas and how you're stepping up and really doing this thing as a father. Shout outs and kudos to you. And this courageous leadership framework can be applied to leading at home as well. All right, we're going to dive in. And as Kevin Wayne Johnson, I see you checking in with us. Good to see you on with us as well. As we talk about these 5 questions that you really need to ask yourself if you want to be a more courageous leader. So, yep, I got to give you a little bit before we jump into these 5 questions. Recognize that in the world right now, recognize in the context of what we're living in, there is a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot happening in our organizations as people are being onboarded, as people are deciding whether or not they want to go back to work in general, as people are finding employment elsewhere. There's some downsizing, there's some shifts and pivots that your organization is making. And now more than ever, your organization needs you to step up and be a better leader. Now, I know some of you are fantastic. You won awards this year. You're always top. Your people are applauding what you bring to the organization, how much you take care of them. But there's always a little bit more growth, a little bit more stretching that can happen. And in the midst of this crazy world, we need leaders like never before. So I want to push you a little bit in this conversation tonight on Sunday Night Live. All right. So if you're hanging out with us, go ahead and drop that hashtag Sunday Night Live in the comments as we get started with these 5 questions for courageous leaders. 5 questions you need to answer if you want to live and lead more courageously. Here's the first one. Question number 1. What do I bring? What do I bring? Now, I got a little briefcase icon I drew at the end of this, but what do I bring? What do I bring to the table? What do I bring to my organization? What do I bring to the groups that I'm a part of? When I step into a room, what am I bringing with me? This question is very important because a lot of times we get thrown off because we spend so much time looking at the problems and challenges in our organizations, the difficulties and the hardships, without spending a little bit more time recognizing what you bring to the table. So that's talent, just stuff you just have, that skill, things that you've acquired over time, that is education, that's training, that's leadership style, temperament, personality. You got to keep these things in focus as you start your week. And I know many of you are doing Sunday night prep and you're going over your journals or strategizing or maybe looking through some emails to start your week. I want to pull you back from that just a little bit and encourage you to take a few moments and recognize, even if your organization is not recognizing it, even if you got some difficult members of the team that don't want to admit to it, take a few moments for yourself and say, hey, Pierre, this is what you bring to the table. This is what you're bringing to your organization. This is what you're bringing to your team. This is what you're bringing to those projects. And take a few moments and jot down the experience and the training. Remind yourself of the degrees and the certification and the things that you've gone through in your professional career that you bring to the table, that you bring to a meeting, that you bring to a Zoom call every single time that you're there. It's so important for you to remember what you bring to the table, what you bring to the organization. Okay, here's the next piece. Here's the next piece. And sometimes we start with this instead of starting with what we bring, and that can really throw us off. The next piece is what is going on? What is going on in my organization? So first, what do I bring? I'm looking in my briefcase, looking in my toolkit, looking in my backpack. What am I bringing to the space and place as a leader? And then I'm asking, what is going on? Now, there is an acronym that was introduced in the 80s, popularized in the 90s, and it has experienced a resurgence of sorts here in the 2000s. And it's VUCA. It's VUCA, first introduced more or less as it relates to military strategy and military training. But VUCA, the acronym VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And we find ourselves living and leading in that environment. It's volatile in our organizations. Anything can happen at any time. There could be a major shift. There could be some challenges with the budget. Our entire industry could change off a tweet or a text or a social media post. So it's volatile. Not only is it volatile, it's also uncertain. And this uncertainty relates to the future. We can't project 5 years down the road, in many cases, what's going to happen in our organization. Before, you could have some strong projections 5, 10, 15 years in the future because things were so static and they were going to be stable. Now, the future is really uncertain. Not only is it uncertain, it's also complex. There's so many moving parts as it relates to the work that you do as a leader, regardless the size of your organization. Fortune 500 company, 4-person nonprofit, there are a lot of moving parts, and then it's ambiguous. The ambiguity is for the present. The uncertainty as we look to the future, but the ambiguity is as we look as what's going on in the present. This is the environment that we live and lead in. And in order for me to lead better in this environment, I have to better familiarize myself with what's going on in my organization. Not just the people that I like, not just the sections of the organization that I have the greatest affinity toward, not just the people that I'm closest to, but in all parts of the organization. How can I be a bit more knowledgeable? How can I be a bit more people oriented? And how can I have a better handle on how my people respond in certain environments so that when we hit a bump or a rough patch or a difficulty, I can lead accordingly. So take a few more notes and have a few more conversations about what's going on in your organization. All right. So 5 questions for courageous leaders, for courageous leaders, 5 questions personally you need to ask yourself to be a more courageous leader. 1, what do I bring to the table? 2, what's going on? Question number 3, what makes you uneasy? And let's be honest, and I got this confused, disgruntled face here, or irritated, or even worried, more of a worried face here. If we're honest, we don't like to talk about this. What makes you uneasy as it relates to your organization? So you see why we started with what you bring to the table? Because that's a centering conversation. It's a perspective conversation. When we lay out our tools first, when we lay out our experiences first, when we lay out our perspective first, it gives us an overview of not only what we have, but also what we need to look for, what we need to resource, what we need to get. And as we look at what's going on, we're introduced to the parts of it that makes us uneasy. Now, this is an EQ conversation. This is an emotional intelligence conversation. And it's also a wonderful opportunity to check in with mentors, to check in with coaches, to check in with colleagues, counterparts at similar organizations, and have the conversation about what's making you uneasy in your leadership role and with your organization. A lot of times we tuck this on the inside, we hide it, but the more we tuck it on the inside, the more we hide it, the more it has control over us. And it's just like mold. It actually grows in the darkness and it festers. But the more we can bring to the surface the things that make us uneasy, that make us fearful, and then have the appropriate conversations about it, you'll begin to find your courage grow just a little bit more because you're not so afraid, you're not so frightened by it. All right, let's move to question number 4. I got a little ABC icon here. And this one is, what are your options? As this is Sunday night or maybe Monday morning, as you're having a bagel or chai latte, getting your mind right to do your work this week, ask yourself, what are your options? You got some decisions that need to be made. And it's maybe even a lingering decision. That lingering decision may be what's contributing to your uneasiness, and you recognize there are a lot of moving parts, and you've minimized not your what you bring to the table. You're not going to minimize it anymore. You're going to maximize it. You're going to pull the magnifying glass out and look at the organization. You're going to point to and address the uneasy parts, and then you're going to think about, what are my options here? What are my options as a leader this week? What direction can I go? What are the directions that I could go? And not just my A, B, and C. Maybe you need to throw a couple of more letters in there, because there's no guarantee that that A, B, C, or D option will work. But you need to be mindful as you start your week, as you set the tone, as you set the direction for your organization this week. You got to ask yourself, what are my options as a leader? And here's the last of our questions. Here's the last of our questions. 5 questions for courageous leaders. 5 questions you need to ask yourself if you want to lead more courageously. Question number 5 is, what will you share? And I put a little gift icon here. What will you share? This question is important because you realize, as a leader, everyone doesn't need to know everything, but everyone in the organization needs to know something. Everyone in your organization does not need to know everything that you know as a leader, but everyone in the organization needs to know something, from you, needs to hear from you. A few things that need to be known from you as the leader. One is a question of vision. I'll write it here in the corner. One is a question of vision. They need to know what's your vision for the organization? What's your vision for a project? What's your vision for a section of time? A lot of times as leaders, we have this general idea that's locked in our head, or it's printed and given out as an email. But in order for a vision to stick, it needs to be repeated. So they need to have vision from you as a leader. They need to have clarity from you as a leader. That communication that leads to clarity. When are you being intentional about clearing up the ambiguous parts, the uncertain parts? Leaders, your organization needs vision and they need clarity. There is nothing more frustrating than being on a team, being part of an organization, and the vision is not clear and the leader is not clear. The vision is not pronounced and the leader is not clear. The third one, or a third one to consider, is that your organization, more specifically your team, needs motivation. And here's what I mean by motivation. I don't just mean general YouTube motivational talk. I don't mean rah-rah. It's more so you need to know what moves them. What moves them as it relates to their position in the organization. What is it? Is it success? Is it achievement? Is it facing challenges? Is it being stretched? Is it recognition? What moves the individuals that are part of your team, that are in your organization? And this is key, because not everyone is motivated. Not everyone is moved by the same thing. So in order for you to get the most out of your people, you got to figure out what you're going to share with them. Not just vision, not just a sense of clarity, but sharing the things with them that's going to move them. And that's also, the share section is also being intentional about what you share as it relates to your personal story and your journey as a leader. There are some people who don't need to hear a lot of that. There are others that do. And being careful not to overshare, that can be detrimental to your organization. All right. So 5 questions for courageous leaders. If you want to lead courageously, you got to wrestle with these questions. What do I bring to the table? What am I bringing? to the organization, what is going on in my organization, what makes me uneasy about this section or time period in my organization, what are my options as a leader, and what will I share? And as you wrestle with those questions, because we can't just ask the questions and jot down the answers. As you answer those questions, then I gotta push you, take the next action. That's where we apply the courage piece. That's how we move this thing forward. All of these questions, wrestling with them, helps us to build our courage because we see the organization and we see ourselves from a different perspective. But courage does not happen in a vacuum. It does not happen really on a whiteboard. It does not happen on a post-it note. Courage happens in action. Courage is something that has to be applied. So as you go through these 5 questions, and there's some more questions that are going to come to mind, you got to ask yourself, what's the next action that I need to take? What's the next phone call? What's the next email? What's the next meeting? What's the next decision that I need to make? And you're not just making it, you're making it in the context of the questions that you've asked yourself and the ways that you've pushed yourself to be a more courageous leader. All right, that's all I got for this edition of Sunday Night Live. I would love to continue the conversation with you. Maybe you're struggling with some of the courageous choices you need to make as a leader, or you recognize that for your team, for the time period that you're in, for the challenges that you're facing, not just you, but you and the people that you're leading need to have a conversation on what courage applied looks like for you in your organization. I want to encourage you to go to prcquinn.com, prcquinn.com, click on contact. Let's have a conversation about what courageous leadership looks like for you and looks like for your organization. Hey, tag a leader that you know, take this link, drop it in their email, inbox them. Let them know about these 5 questions so they can be equipped to be more courageous leaders as well. And I will see you next time on Sunday Night Live. Take care.